Yeah, what about, there we go. All right, we good? Yeah. I'd like to call this public hearing to order for the purposes of receiving citizens' comments on the county's advertised real estate tax rate of 89 cents per $100 of assessed value. The Board of Supervisors voted to advertise the current real estate tax rate. Therefore, no increase to the real estate tax rate will be considered this year. In order for the board to consider a higher real estate tax rate, there will be required to re-advertise and hold another public hearing. Following this public hearing, a second public hearing will be held in regards to the advertised budget of 2016-2017, and that will begin at 6:30 or sometime thereafter. At this point in time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the name of the speaker that is signed up to discuss the tax rate, and I'll also call out the name of the next individual. I will ask you to come ahead and have a seat. You'll state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Please use the microphone when speaking, and direct your comments to the chair and the members of the board, not to audience members or the staff. This is our time to listen to you. We'll not be answering questions during these hearings. We ask the audience to refrain from clapping or commenting between speakers so that we may clearly hear the next speaker. Please leave any written statements with the clerk. If you plan to speak and have not signed in at the table in the lobby, please feel free to do so at this time. Our first speaker who signed up is Steve Sheeler, and the next is Billy Hanks.
My name is Steve Sheeler. My address, since I'm representing Longshot McCoy Fire and Rescue, is 5770 McCoy Road. It's Blacksburg, Virginia. If you've got a mailbox here in Blacksburg, you got a P.O. box here in McCoy. So it is in Longshot McCoy. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Miller and Ms. Edmonds, on behalf, let me back up just a second. I am Rescue Chief of Longshot McCoy and Chairman of the Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Commission. On behalf of the Commission and the 5 fire departments and 5 rescue squads, I would like to thank the board and the county administrators for the support that has allowed these departments to provide a high level of service to the citizens of Montgomery County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hanks, and the next speaker is Sharon Williams.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, Mr. Mays, County Administrator, my name is Billy Hanks. I'm Fire Chief, Christiansburg Fire Department. We have 1525 Grandview Drive, and I am the co-chair of the Fire and Rescue Commission, and I'm chairman of the Fire and Rescue Commission Equipment Replacement Committee. I'd like to echo our appreciation to the board and all the support that you guys give us every year and have given us every year for many years. And would really like to thank you for the consideration of the extra funding that you provided for us this year to be able to do capital replacement for the equipment that is much needed in the county. We pledge to continue to spend the money wisely and make sure that we're not spending money that we don't need to be spending, but it is a challenge for us to replace this equipment, and most of this equipment, is on a 15 to a 20-year replacement cycle. But we do appreciate everything you do for us day in and day out, and if anything the Fire and Rescue Commission can ever do to help you, just let us know.
Thank you. Is there Sharon Williams? And the next speaker is Susan Miller.
My comments are actually more in regard to the budget. Should I wait until that time?
We do have a budget. That's the next, which will start at 6:30. I'll leave that up to you as to what
it's probably more appropriate at that time if I'm not messing up the schedule.
No problem. We'll just move you over. Susan Miller.
Ditto.
All right. Now, those are all the folks that have signed up to talk about the 89 cent tax rate. And so but you don't have to be signed up on the list to be able to address the board. And so is there anyone else who would like to discuss? Now, again, we're going to have another public hearing in just a little bit. It's going to start at 6:30. But is there anyone else who would like to come forward to discuss the 89-cent tax rate? Going once, going twice. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. We're going to take a break for about 25 minutes, and we'll get started at 6:30 at that point in time. Thank you very much.
All right. Get it together,
At
kids.
this time, I will call the second public hearing to order for the purposes of receiving citizens' comments on the county's advertised budget for fiscal year 2016-2017. The rules for the first public hearing will apply to this public hearing as well. I will call the name of the speaker, the next speaker on the list, who should come forward and be prepared to speak. Come to the podium, state your name and address using the microphone, and you will have 5 minutes. And I'm going to start off with ask Sharon Williams and Susan Miller to come forward.
Oops.
I can't make her stay in there.
Sharon Williams, 210 Kimball Lane, Christiansburg. One of my favorite quotes says that if you see a turtle sitting on a fence post, you can pretty much guarantee that they didn't get there by themselves. So I wanted to start off by thanking you on behalf of the Montgomery County Parks and Rec, of which I happen to be chairperson and have been on that commission for 6 years. I just want to thank you for the funding and support that I have witnessed personally over that 6 years, and also as a parent for almost 17 in programs that my children have participated in and that I've participated in myself. So I just want to make sure that is definitely the overarching theme of what I'm about to say. And in thinking about the remarks that I wanted to comment on, I kept thinking of stories and numbers that I wanted to throw out, and I thought, gosh, I'm only going to have 5 minutes, so I could really pare this down to a couple that have really kind of stuck in my memory over the last few years. Some of the things that Montgomery County Parks and Rec makes available are the things that sometimes you might not hear about unless you had a personal connection with that participant. But here are a couple things that I have heard about in the last couple of years. There may be a kid who couldn't afford to play a particular sport without the contribution of free equipment that's provided by the department, or by the reconditioning that's done many, many, many times over by volunteers and staff. And some of those students, some of those young people stick with a particular sport and then become a standout who eventually may earn a college scholarship or may become a coach themselves in a few years or play for many years because of that contribution. So those things go a long way. It's not just for that season or for that particular child. There's a huge ripple effect. There are many senior citizens who volunteer their time to maintain the Huckleberry Trail and many trails around our county. There are senior Olympics participants who work really hard to represent themselves well, as well as our community, and at the same time they're warding off illness and lethargy and setting an example for the people who are younger than them to stay active and maintain the energy and zeal that they have. They're a great example to us. There may be a kid who goes through our programs who, because of that experience, chooses something related to recreation or program management at a college, or they go away to school and then relocate back to the county because of having an affinity or a good experience with some of the things that they've enjoyed as a young person, or the plethora of people who choose Montgomery County, whether they ever lived here or not, just because of some of the amenities that the county offers, where they want to raise their children and work and play and contribute in a positive place. Some of our participants meet big brother and big sister type mentors by their participation in maybe a summer camp or another program that's offered out of the activity building at the Frog Pond, and either develop a lifelong friendship with somebody or have somebody come into their lives as a lifelong mentor, or sometimes they participate again later by leading those kinds of programs. We've had children who have learned to swim at the Frog Pond because maybe their mother almost drowned as a child and it was a no-brainer, and she insisted upon them getting the swimming lesson so that they would not have that fear follow them for the rest of their life. I would say an overarching theme of our success of Montgomery County Parks and Rec is our reach and the consistent growth that we've had over the past years. I honestly have I only have hard numbers for the past 6 years that I have been involved, but in every season and in every sport that Montgomery County Parks and Rec has offered, there has been consistent growth. And just to throw out a couple, football in the last 6 years has increased by 45 participants, and basketball has increased by 181 in countywide in all the different areas that we offer. So that's a noteworthy accomplishment, and that's something that we appreciate you contributing to. And if you think about it, especially in these days when people have so many opportunities to choose from, so many distractions at times, so many other good offerings in the area, and time strains and time drains at times that are on individuals and families these days. You know, that's pretty noteworthy, I believe, because we always have lots of things. And we are fortunate that we live in an area that we have lots of offerings through the towns that are in the county. One of our biggest success stories that you may have heard about, because we did get some good PR, is the 2014 Montgomery County All-Stars team. And there were 12 girls, age 11 and 12, and they worked very hard. They had many dedicated coaches and volunteers and parents who helped them win the district title. They then went on to win the state title and finished runner-up in the 2014 Dixie World Series, which was in Louisiana.
That's your time. You can finish your sentence if you would like.
And I just wanted to say that the significance of that is the team that beat us was from a county outside of New Orleans with a population of 250,000, and that Griner team of girls came from a population of about 800. So that's really saying something. Thank you all for everything that you do.
Thank you. Ms. Miller, please come forward. And our next speaker behind Ms. Miller is Gregory Nelson. If you would come forward.
Good evening. My name is Susan Miller. I live at 3065 Mud Pike Road. Mailing address is Christiansburg. I support the budget as presented. I especially appreciate your decisions to keep funding, I hope, I haven't found it in the budget line yet, the part-time McKeep community service worker on the payroll, as she is the person who does all of the screening, calling, planning, related to helping those who are truly in need in Montgomery County. Thanks to her also for organizing and maintaining the food bank, which has expended to date approximately $20,000 of monies that McKeep raises through the thrift store purchases by the general public and through donations of many people in Montgomery County. Our job at McKeep is to try to assist Montgomery County families to be safe, warm, and not hungry in family situations which are financially broken. We provide money to purchase one-way bus tickets for those whom the local police departments and Montgomery County Sheriff's Department indicate would be an additional burden to the county if they stayed in the area. We pay for temporary housing in some situations if there is no other recourse available. McKeep is all about Montgomery County and our clients. I also appreciate your monetary support for the best Parks and Recreation Department in the region. We may not have all of the facilities that we need, but with your dollars, the staff take care of everything they can. I invite you to take one of our tours or schedule a rafting or canoe trip along the New River. I've made that challenge before, and I don't think anybody has taken me up. I also look forward to reviewing with you the master plan for the Montgomery County Parks and Recreation Department so that we can point out the most desperate needs as identified by the staff and the members of the commission. I also agree with your support of the Montgomery County Public Schools. I cannot identify what portions of the new budget will impact health and physical education, which is, of course, my baby. But as soon as I figure that out, I'll talk with you some more. It was 2 years ago that health and physical education programs were cut at the middle school level to save money and to assist with SOL mastery in English and math. Parents called me and asked repeatedly, why are my 6th and 7th graders not in health and physical education in the school year? They need to be active. Research has shown us that being fit and being active immediately prior to testing allows students to think more clearly. I hope that this is not the first time that you have heard that. Lastly, thank you for your dedication to Montgomery County. We may not always agree, but we always have the opportunity to speak to the issues impacting the citizens of Montgomery County. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, please come forward. Our next speaker is Devon Bledsoe, if you would come forward as well.
Good evening. My name is Gregory Nelson. I live at 3650 Millstone Ridge Road, Blacksburg, Virginia 24060. I'm here to ask that the county consider hiring a technical expert to review the open burning ground permit at the Radford Arsenal that has no fiduciary relationship with Virginia Tech or the Arsenal. I ask this on behalf of the community and also Hold Radford Arsenal Accountable Group, who's organizing to adjudicate what it means to live next to such a large site that was delisted from the Superfund in the early 90s. I'm a fence line resident who grew up next to the Arsenal. That's over 20 years of breathing open burning fumes at my house and other emissions from the plant. So I'm a walking scientific experiment in terms of how these chemicals interact within my body. The only way we can know how chemicals and toxins released from a facility is through the studying of the people that are exposed. Unfortunately, that dictates that we need to be prudent in how we adjudicate the criteria on whether we decide to test or not to test well water and the air within the county. Given that in 1976, a nuclear plant siting study for the Department of Army of the Office of the Chief Engineers in Washington, D.C. stated, it should be noted that the general meteorological conditions in the vicinity of RAP are poorly situated for locating thermal power plants, end quote. This siting study for a nuclear power plant within the region illustrates that the site was not safe for a thermal power plant, i.e. coal or natural gas. It therefore should dictate that the siting of an open burning ground is also not safe. This exposes the downwind population to unnecessary burdens of toxic contamination on an ongoing basis and threatens the long-term economic development of this county, and also brings forward liability issues on behalf of the leadership of the county. In terms of moving forward, it would be in our hope and best interest to firmly recognize that we are next to such a facility of the largest polluter in the state. And 2 days ago, we celebrated 75 years of the Arsenal's operation within the county on April 5th. So furthermore, I want to support the pipeline people here today on their concerns about a new danger coming into the county that would present new dangers for potential groundwater contamination and air quality issues from compressor stations. To quote the nuclear plant siting study from the Department of the Army, quote, the potential for groundwater contamination of the Price and Mercady formations at the site should be investigated. This is at the Radford site. Local water users should be identified in order to determine the impacts of potential contamination. Quote, more extensive geological and seismic investigations in the site and near the vicinity are indicated. Specifically, these studies would entail the performance of geological foundation borings, local geologic mapping, and further analysis of the shape, shutdown, and operating basis for earthquakes. While I'm not concerned about earthquakes, I am concerned about the finding of low levels of perchlorate contamination within the Public Service Water Authority's wells. The 2015 ATSDR report is based upon studies that do not conduct any scientific rigor with regards to how toxicity from the plant could move off site. Not hiring a technical expert puts the community in jeopardy for further contamination. It would entail further children like myself having to grow up in the region of the largest polluter in the state. And I ask for the money on behalf of the citizens to finally put at rest the community's concerns. Merely pretending that this issue does not exist or using red herring arguments like fertilizer contamination jeopardizes the health and safety of the residents of the community. This must be countered by prudent resources and devotion to environmental testing far from the Radford site, as the U.S. Army has identified a 50-mile extreme risk zone around the facility. This facility is dangerous and is an ongoing threat. Let's hope that we do not have a pipeline that comes into this community and presents another danger. I've testified and witnessed the ongoing contamination at the Navajo Nation where a coal slurry pipeline has devastated the region and contaminated the drinking water of thousands of Native American communities within the Four Corners region. So please consider these issues with regards to the health and safety of the water and the air within the county.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Bledsoe, and would Diane Richardson please come forward?
My name is Devon Bledsoe. I live at 706 Crestwood Drive in Blacksburg. And I'm here tonight as spokesperson for Environmental Patriots of the New River Valley to ask you to allocate money in this budget to employ an expert to review the pending DEQ permit for renewal of open burning hazardous waste at the Radford Arsenal. Our community has been given repeated assurances that toxins being released by the facility are not getting off the base. The ATSDR assessment of our potential exposure to toxins in the groundwater at the Arsenal states that contaminants have not migrated, and without any actual testing to confirm that assumption, we don't know that that's actually the case. In fact, the report from the ATSDR says on page 108 that Reiner is located several miles south of the Arsenal. Any public wells serving the community would not be affected by the Arsenal for the same reason that we find private wells are not affected, which is to say that the contaminated water would have to flow against gravity and upstream in order to be found there. Yet, the results just put out on the municipal wells in Reiner show that perchlorate has indeed contaminated the two wells. 3 of the 4 tests came back positive. The detection undercuts the claim that groundwater contaminants have not and could not migrate in this fashion and in this direction. The endocrine disrupting chemicals in these wells ought to compel county officials to consult an expert, if only to minimize liability concerns. If a technical review suggests that further testing is not warranted, then we can all rest easier. But it would certainly be prudent to seek the outside counsel on this potentially very big problem. There's ample documentation from both the Army and the Environmental Protection Agency that perchlorate is a widespread contaminant at the Arsenal. It's been found in both the surface and the groundwater at the Arsenal in 100% of wells tested repeatedly. So please get some expert advice to ensure that our children aren't being unduly exposed to this very toxic compound in their drinking water. The incidence of thyroid disease here may be a canary in a coal mine. We also became aware this last week that there's another reason to contract an outside expert to look at our exposure here, and that is that the Army, or the Arsenal, may currently be producing depleted uranium munitions. Even though the Army's Joint Munitions Command PR official Justine Barati assured the community this last January that depleted uranium was not being used at the Radford Arsenal, the evidence seems to indicate otherwise, which brings up a lot of uncertainty and questions. In fact, the Montgomery County Planning Commission had on their agenda February 25th of 2010 an environmental project review for a proposed load and pack operation for PGU-14, which is depleted uranium. This was just before a notice appeared in the Roanoke Times classifieds that stated that Alliant Tech Systems had applied to the Department of Health for a permit to work with depleted uranium. We have confirmation from an EPA employee who prefers to remain nameless at this time, but we have confirmation that the permit to work with depleted uranium was granted by the Virginia Department of Health. The question then becomes, is there a load and pack operation for depleted uranium at the Radford Arsenal now? We understand that these projectiles, these bullets, are being made by New River Energetics. They're a tenant at the facility, but the contamination they release gets all of our kids. So our question then is, if they are still today producing depleted uranium munitions at the Radford Arsenal, then certainly that would warrant some further study from an outside expert, since we've maybe been misled on that. If they are indeed manufacturing depleted uranium bullets at the Radford Arsenal, we need to know what, if any, acceptance testing they do. That means that ordinarily these weapons, these bullets, are tested before they're shipped out. If they're tested, then there's the potential for contamination to be at the facility. The EPA has identified depleted uranium at the Arsenal as long ago as 2006. Likewise, if they are producing depleted uranium bullets at the Radford Arsenal, we need to know how they're disposing of the waste, since we know that they open burn waste, and we have no idea what's in that waste since there's no monitoring going on. It would behoove those of you who represent those of us who live with the decisions being made over there at the Arsenal to find that out, to get those facts and do whatever you need to do to protect human health and the environment. So it seems...
You may
Thank you.
finish your sentence if you would
I
like.
was going to say, it seems that employing an outside arsenal like they've done at the Picatinny Arsenal in New Jersey and arsenals all over the United States of America, where outside experts are employed, is a good idea.
Thank you. Ms. Richardson, and then the next is Louise Gay.
Good evening. My name is Diana Richardson, and I live at 1431 Breckenridge Drive. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm here to request the county to set aside some funds to engage a legal firm to protect Montgomery County from negative aspects of the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Roanoke County, Giles County, and Preserve Craig Incorporated have all engaged the same firm to provide them with legal advice that concerns the MVP proposal. That law firm is Water and Power Law Group. We believe it would be advantageous for Montgomery County, the Montgomery County government, to also establish a relationship with Water and Power Law, the law firm that has specific expertise in FERC-related issues, including pipelines. It is not engaged with any pipeline company clients, so there is no conflict of interest when serving local governments, and it is generally inclined toward negotiations with and aiding counties in preparation of legal filings and similar non-litigious means of protecting their interests. Engagement with this law firm would enable the county to obtain expert legal advice that is specific to pipeline FERC issues, potentially at a reduced cost, when such advice would be in the common interest with neighboring counties and would provide a strong basis for cooperation with neighboring counties in addressing common interests, including the following. The first one is the advocacy for FERC to conduct a programmatic environmental impact statement that we know of, we've talked about before, that would seek to address and minimize the cumulative impacts of multiple pipelines proposed for Virginia. The Clean Water Act advocacy to require that the Mountain Valley Pipeline obtain an individual permit rather than a general nationwide permit that MVP is seeking. The individual permit would address potential problems and mitigation that are specific to our bodies of water that it would impact. Also, the National Historic Preservation Act, they deal with that. A big issue they deal with is compressor station and NEPA. Apparently, as we've been reading, MVP is trying to obtain a pipeline permit without defining a compressor station location anywhere in Virginia. And the potential intent is, we are afraid, will be for them to come back at a second round of permitting and then ask for the compressor station. This practice is known as segmentation under NEPA or NEPA. Intentional segmentation is prohibited under that law or under that act. General issues concerning potential impacts of groundwater resources, serving residential and rural residences, and other purposes, as we know, issues like karst terrain, that's our sinkholes, our caves, the underground conduits, And also, finally, general issues concerning public safety, where there is a high-pressure, large-diameter pipeline that would be in proximity to public structures such as schools and, of course, private structures and homes and farmland. I've spoken about this in general terms, and tonight there are two other gentlemen that have signed up to speak, one from Giles County and one from Craig County, who have already been involved with Water and Power Law Group, and they wanted to come before you to talk to you about how advantageous it has been for them to deal with this firm. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gay, and then the next speaker is, I believe it's Linda Majors, and it's difficult to read the handwriting.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I am Louisa Gay, and I live at 3925 Horse Farm Road in Montgomery County. I'm here tonight to express my concern over emergency preparedness and public safety in relation to the pipeline. This keeps cutting out, sorry. I do not believe the taxpayers should be responsible for costs associated with problems caused by MVP's construction and operation. So I advocate joining with the counties of Roanoke, Giles, and Craig by establishing a relationship with the Water, Power, and Law Group. I believe the cost for this would be approximately $10,000. In karst terrain, pipeline stability is a concern. This was noted by Draper and Aiden, which are MVP's karst engineers, in Resource Report 6. If an explosion in our area were to occur due to pipeline instability, the effects could be devastating. A blast zone of 2,000 feet will have significant collateral damage as the compression waves travel outward. Fires, collapsing homes, and further out from the blast zone will be shattered glass from windows. This event could rapidly overwhelm our local volunteer fire and rescue resources. There is also a potential for a forest fire in the Jefferson National Forest, which could confound ingress and egress, delaying or preventing rescue efforts. In a worst-case scenario, this type of conflagration could have the potential for significant loss of life and property. MVP, in their resource report, stated that they would provide only training, but no other assurances were made. To protect our county's public safety and supplement our emergency preparedness and response, the board should require that MVP pay for training, disaster drills, and possible equipment such as off-road track-driven apparatus. Joining forces with other counties by hiring the Water, Power, and Law Group will facilitate discussions with MVP to get the most out of them possible so that the taxpayers in the county are not left with the bill. I thank you all for your service to your community.
Thank you. Ms. Majors, and then I have two speakers signed up, but you both have slots. So that would be Louise and Roy Questenberry, if both of you would come forward.
My name is Linda Majors. I live at 2620 Mount Tabor Road in Blacksburg. I'm here to request you put money in the budget for hiring the Water, Power, and Law Group from Berkeley, California, to protect the interests of the citizens of Montgomery County. As you've heard already, Roanoke, Giles, and Craig County already have been using their services in protecting their citizens. I live near Slusher's Chapel Cave, very near it. We have the property next to it. And I've lived there 27 years, and there's been 2 incidences of fecal coliform contamination of our well. And this happened in periods of high water when there's no growing season, like late fall, winter, or early spring. I was told when this first happened, I went to the DEQ, and they said, well, one of the good things is you have lots of water. One of the bad things is that there's no filtration. Things that would, in other soil, take years to filter through, just goes through in minutes and hours. And they said, well, hopefully this was something, the water got high enough, flushed something out, hopefully you won't have any more problems. Well, we did again. So every time that there's high water down below, filling the sunken creek bed or the dry creek bed that actually goes directly into Slusher's Chapel Cave by Mount Tabor Road, I'm always thinking, oh my gosh. Anyway, I walk alternate 200. It's now, the center line is now marked, and for purposes of what I'm going to be talking about, I walk from Mount Tabor Road across the property, the lot at the bottom of Preston Forest, onto Ryan's property, and then onto Del Dyer's mountain land. So that would be at the very top of Brush Mountain. It goes across 2 sinkholes in Christian Reddy's property, and then on Ryan's property it goes circles around the top of it across 2 gullies that feed into a water cave right by their house. It's blind, so the only way the water goes is down. Seeing the marked center line, and then up there, the marked staging area also above where this cave is. So the water would all be going downhill into this wet cave, or actually water-filled cave. Showed me how very clearly and how impacted our water will be within this route. You know, the county has rules that if you have more than 10,000 square feet of land disturbance, you have to have a permit, but obviously MVP doesn't have to go by that. And whatever their ideas about mitigation are going to be very, very different than other people's that are impacted by this. With dye tracing, you know, the DCR has found that Ryan's Cave is connected to Slusher's Chapel Cave, where I live. That's about a mile by road. And then Mill Creek Cave, and then, you know, obviously this would impact people in Ellett Valley. You know, there's developments there, Mossy Springs development, and other people. So talking about the staging area also, a town in West Virginia of 6,000 had an incident where a contractor had a diesel spill when they were maintaining the right-of-way. And that contaminated the water for people, for this town of 6,000. And this is a town of 6,000, and they were not able to get any compensation or help with this for months and months. They had to truck in water at their own expense. Finally, cleanup happened. I'm not sure how, you know, much they had to work to get that done, but it was months later, and there was no admission of cause and effect at all. So the staging area, with many construction vehicles, and, you know, this is like, my son works on movies, and once you get permission for stuff, you know, who knows what's going to happen after that. So once you get permission for a staging area, who's monitoring, oh, your truck's not leaking. Anyway, when I see the staging area above, on their property, above the slope, going directly into the water cave, which is our water source supplying many county residents, it's a problem that's just guaranteed to happen. After Ryan's property, you go up the mountain where it's forested on Del Dyer's property, and he has a mountain stream that you can just hop over with 1 foot. This is not in flood, but it's in a ravine, so you go way down and way up, and in fact, oh no. A forester told me, you know, they'd have to have cables. Anyway, I would respectfully ask you to please think of the citizens of Montgomery County, get some advice, and help this law group obviously has worked already with surrounding counties. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Is it Lois? And you're both signed up, so you've got 5 minutes each if you want to take turns, or?
No.
Okay.
Actually, my husband needs my help. He talks so slow that he would ask me to help him out.
If you please state your name and address, and both of you've got 5 minutes.
Okay. My name is Roy Questenberry, and this is my wife, Lois. We live at 1025 Madison Lane, Blacksburg. We ask that the board approve funding to gain consultation from experts to provide to protect the citizens of Montgomery County. We would like to talk about the impact Mountain Valley Pipeline will have on property values, mortgages, and insurance. Now I'm turning it over to Lois.
We have researched the impacts of the pipeline will have on property value, mortgage, and insurance. A copy of our letter that we wrote to FERC has been submitted to you, the members of the board, and I hope you have a chance to review that. But a report in Boulder Weekly, dated in December 2013, states the impact of oil and gas extraction on property values has found homes near activity or even as far away as 2.5 miles can lose between 4 to 15% of their market value. In areas where environmental awareness is high, property values could drop by 20%. Here are some examples. Homeowners impacted by the Pepco pipeline in Maryland experienced 11% reduction in their property values the first year, while homeowners impacted by the BP Inland Corporation pipeline experienced a 25% decrease in their property value. The loss of property value increases in areas experiencing explosions, spills, and contamination. In worst-case scenarios, properties are rendered nearly worthless because no one will buy them. When you're a homeowner attempting to sell your property, chances are whoever's going to buy your property will need a mortgage. Obtaining a mortgage on a property impacted by a 42-inch high-pressure pipeline would be difficult. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have purchased more than 65% of all new home mortgages in the U.S. Fannie and Freddie have established rules that prohibit them from purchasing home mortgages on properties engaged in industrial activities that deal with the transportation or storage of toxic substances, such as gas and oil products. Nor do they allow for the transportation of these materials on their properties. All mortgage contracts have a standard clause that prohibits homeowners from selling or leasing any part of their property or doing anything that will decrease the value of the property without permission from the mortgage holder. So if a homeowner signs an easement agreement, or if the easement is obtained using eminent domain, the agreement may result in a technical default for the property owner with that mortgage holder. Technical default means the mortgage holder could force the homeowner to pay off the loan or vacate the property. In at least 34 states, mortgage lenders have simply stopped lending in places due to oil and gas activities. Homeowners insurance, which is also a requirement for getting a mortgage, is getting harder to obtain for properties impacted by pipelines. Some companies are requiring a huge buffer zone around homes as a condition for their mortgage and insurance. In some cases, insurance companies will insure the property, but the cost of the policy has increased so dramatically, making the cost prohibitive for the property owner. Our homes are typically the most important investment we have. Most of us could not afford to have our properties deemed worthless. This will also impact the tax assessed values and the revenues for Montgomery County if this pipeline goes through. So we ask the board again to approve funding to gain consultation from experts to protect us homeowners and the citizens of Montgomery County. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Sarah Garst and then Anita Puckett. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Oh, no, yes, absolutely. Yes, sir.
If an insurance company is interested in what kind of dog you have, I think they will be very interested in a pipeline that has a 2,000-foot blast zone.
And I don't know if Sarah Garst and Anita Puckett.
Hello. Thank you for your time. I'm Sarah Garst. My address is 816 Virginia Avenue, and that is in Salem, Virginia. I hope that's okay. I lived here for 15 years. The last 15 years, I've only recently moved to Salem. But in the fall of last year, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And recently it's come to light that there's been perchlorate found in multiple wells in Montgomery County. I have no family history of the disease, and in the middle of the night one night I stumbled upon the information that there was a high incidence of thyroid cancer in this region. And it was really alarming to me. My best friend that I ran with for 5 years also has a giant goiter that he's getting ready to have removed. A dear friend that went to college with me at Virginia Tech also has some thyroid issues, and to me, the pieces of the puzzle seem to be lining up, and it's concerning to me. I'm very young. I have 2 small children who I worry that maybe they were exposed as well. So I just want to speak tonight and say that I would like for the board to consider allocating money for an independent consultant to look at the impact that the arsenal is having on the community, on our health, on our air, on our water, so that we can be resting assured that our kids and the residents of this area are not impacted by what's happening with the open burning, that's not being monitored, and with whatever contamination might be happening along the New River into the water. Thank you for your time.
And the next speaker after Ms. Puckett is Sam Easterling.
Good evening. My name is Anita Puckett, and I live at 306 Rucker Road, Blacksburg, Virginia. Thanks for the opportunity of speaking like other people on asking you to set aside at least $10,000 to obtain specialized legal counsel. Most of what I had to say has already been said, so hopefully for once I'll actually be rather short and in commenting on additional matters that haven't been said yet. Per this legal action, that specializes in addressing issues related to FERC. My point would be that if we do it as a block with water and power, then you can be cheaper and it'll be more effective, and it will show collaboration and cooperation with our adjoining counties. The issue about the compressor station near Row Furniture, if it's likely to be near Row Furniture, planned over here in eastern Montgomery, we know that now. Or perhaps the North Fork Valley World Historic District at Catawba Road. This whole idea of segmentation is one that will need very serious, because of the way the application is worded by Mountain Valley, that we'll need really specialized legal advice to sort through that and see if we have a case for segmentation. The other point I want to make is that over in Giles County, they've gone ahead and are in the process of hiring, and other people can talk to this after me, inspectors, credentialed inspectors, to look at state regulations regarding erosion and sedimentation control that normally would be overseen by DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, but they can't do it. I was at VMI yesterday at the Environment Virginia conference, talked with DEQ people about how to handle that, and they are in favor of having citizens who are credentialed to do this. They just have no validity in court. So what you do is hire them, and then they go to DEQ afterwards, and then it can be a valid kind of complaint under those kinds of, that's what I was told yesterday anyway. So at least $10,000 set aside for this purpose for this year, because that is what, we're just using that as a figure because that's what Giles County has been doing. But I would argue with you, or suggest to you rather, not argue, that you look at the next year and the next year and include a line item, if you will, for this in the future. I asked to Vicki to pass out to you the easement agreement that's circulating in West Virginia that people are signing. And if you look at item number 7, it requires approval to set a second pipeline right next to the first of equal or greater size. So once we get through this mess, assuming that potentially it's going to be built, they could come along and try to do it all over again with a second pipeline. So it seems like, these issues are not going to go away over time. So it might be worth your consideration to think about potential funding in the future so that you have the funds on reserve to address this rather than having it dumped in your lap all at once. Some very serious issues. We've talked about, the gays talked about the issues for the first responders, but we also gave you a handout from Franklin County, a letter that came in today as an EFER comment on their issues regarding roads. And what we heard in a webinar yesterday was that the pipeline companies may say they're going to repair roads, but they don't always do it. and they thrust it back onto the counties to repair roads, bridges, and other infrastructure that is destroyed through the pipeline process. So you may have to have money for that particular purpose. There might be money for violation of zoning and other local ordinances, which Marty may be able to handle, but on the other hand, maybe not, because it could get really tricky. And so in the post-construction period, then, we have these issues of future kinds of new construction, the issues of infrastructure issues as they continue to maintain their pipelines. So I'm just basically asking you to think about it in two stages. One is for this fiscal year to hire water and power, whoever, and then concerning it in the future as a line item or some other way of dealing, as you know far more appropriately than I, on how to deal and set aside funds for continued and probable issues with Mountain Valley. Thanks for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Easterling, and then it looks like, is it Shales? Rick Shales? Shingles, I'm sorry.
So good evening, Chairman Tuck, members of the board, Mr. Meadows. My name is Sam Easterling. I live at 242 Mayfly Lane in the Maggie community of Craig County. Lived there since 2013, and the prior 26 years I lived in Blacksburg. I served as a co-chair of Preserve Craig, which was an organization founded in the early 1990s as a 501c3, dealing primarily at that time with a high voltage power line in the region. The status of that organization was maintained through today. And so we were able to mobilize very quickly about a year ago when alternate 110 and 110R and so forth were announced by the MVP. We had people with experience in these matters, both that were advising us within the county as well as outside the county. And very early on, we met with one of our landowners in the county who has extensive experience with the federal government. And he said, you know, you have to realize that the folks at Mountain Valley Pipeline and EQT and the funding, they have a full-time staff, many people working all day long, and that's all they're doing. All of us, all of you, well, most of you, I know there are several full-time employees, but even then, there's plenty of things for Mr. Meadows to do besides focus just on this task. So really, what the recommendation was to us to seek help. And we have employed a couple of different law firms. We have some members of the community that are also attorneys and have advised us on a pro bono basis. But water and power law became very highly recommended to us because they know the FERC proceedings inside and out. They're a small firm. They made it clear to us when we interviewed them. They're in Berkeley, California, as you know by now. They made it clear that they're not primarily litigators. They don't like to do that. They work the process both in front of the scenes and behind the scenes. They have been very helpful. We'll call them. We'll schedule a call. We'll pay as you go. I know some numbers have been mentioned tonight for you to budget, but as they're being on retainer, we've asked them to do things, and they've met with us on the phone. The one single piece of one document they filed with the FERC on our behalf, they actually sent to both the FERC and to the Forest Service, and it really dealt with the argument of why a regional, programmatic EIS is so important. That document's on the public record. You can certainly look at that if you haven't seen it. I can't speak for the FERC, but I know it's been discussed in meetings at the highest level of the Forest Service. It has their attention. We think it has an impact. Again, their advice to us has been equally helpful. And they worked in the region. They primarily worked in the area of water issues for many years. In that context, they worked with counties around Smith Mountain Lake several years ago. And more recently, because of the sort of growth of natural gas pipelines, they're doing a lot of that type of work. So we really have very good things to say about them. Your colleagues in Roanoke County and Giles County have retained them as well. And I would certainly encourage you to let them help you. It's really in that context that you'll find them most valuable. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Shingles. Okay. Mr. Shingles, and then Miss Albritton is next on the list.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Rick Shingles. I live at 321 Duncan Lane in Newport, Virginia, Giles County. I was called this afternoon to ask if I would stop by here and share with you a little bit about the Giles County experience with water and power. I'll be brief. About 2 months ago, Giles County Board of Supervisors voted to put $10,000 aside to retain these attorneys. And I thought I would tell you from a citizen's perspective what I've witnessed here on the Board of Supervisors for Giles County. Prior to that, they clearly didn't feel comfortable with dealing with a lot of these issues. They were often hesitant. They typically, when they did things, it was in response to something Mountain Valley Pipeline did, FERC did, or preserved Giles County, asking them to pass resolutions and things like that. Since they've got these attorneys, and they now have a strategy on a broad range of issues, like the kind of Diane Richardson talked about, legal issues, and they're actively pursuing them. It's just wonderful to see. They now know what they're doing. They're taking leadership. They're calling us and asking us to do things rather than we asking them to do things. It's just a remarkable thing to witness if you're a citizen, this kind of change in your county government. So it's given them, I think, backbone and a plan. And I'll just give you just a few examples of that. They've challenged with the attorneys for narrow consideration of what would be, who qualifies for consultation status and the privileges that come with that. They and if they solve that problem through the attorney, they solve it for you as well. Because I want to make a point here. They are systematically now collecting information of people, the volunteers from Montgomery County, Giles County, Craig County, Roanoke County have been collecting for a year of geological hazards that actually threaten the stability and integrity of the pipeline that FERC should be made aware of. They're putting all that together. Before we were putting it together, now they're putting it together. And of course, the extent that they do that, use the information that all these volunteers have collected. And we're also hiring an expert who will, anything that's accomplished by that will of course serve, it's for the region, it's not just for Giles County, and will benefit all the counties, including Montgomery County. And I'll just throw in one more that they're not doing because I want to make a point to you. We have gotten the assistance of a graduate student in public administration. I think your county administrator knows, to look at, try and estimate the cost of social service costs to the county of the pipeline coming through. And we chose Montgomery County to have them do that for, not Giles or Craig. We could have picked any county. What I'm trying to say is that other people in other counties realizing we're all in the same basket have been taking a lot of initiatives that your county benefits from. And what we want you to do now is step up and help pay the bill. Thank you.
Ms. Albritton, and then the next speaker is Irene Bleach.
Good evening, friends. It's good to be back with you all. Phyllis Albritton, 1003 Highland Circle. And first, I would like to thank you very much for your help with the school budget this year, especially for the salaries of the teachers and the staff. I know we've got a ways to go, that this is basically what we call a restorative budget, but I'm really grateful for the sake of our teachers and staff who make a difference for our young people. Secondly, I'm going to just speak briefly about the pipeline. As I understand it, this pipeline will not help our region at all. As I understand it, what they're putting through it will go out and across the sea through Virginia Beach area. And so that's painful to me. I don't think they need more money, and as more and more of us are turning to other alternatives, I'm hoping you all will come through for our friends who are being very definitely and directly affected. I'm here today to talk about the health of our neighbors. The arsenal, I don't believe, affects me. I live in Highland Park, but when I talked to the principal at Bellevue School, and some of you may have heard this before, when the very first meeting about the arsenal was being held, she said, "Oh, people in our district they can't come out to meetings like this. It's affecting them. It's affecting their pool, their water. It's affecting our air. So that's why I'm speaking, for the people in our community who are definitely being affected. I was really interested in the Roanoke Times news article today. There's really more to be concerned about than perchlorate. And when we just dwell on that, I really appreciated Greg's being quoted in the paper. He said that residents deserve information about an array of toxic substances there, not just the perchlorate. That's why I'm urging you to hire someone to do this study for us. It is a very minimal cost, I think, considering the cost on our neighbors' health. And my faith tells me to be here for the other. And I'm really hoping that you will hire this soul, a technical expert on air quality, because we need it. We need it for our generations to come. I was very fortunate, as you may know, to have served on the Blacksburg, Christiansburg, Virginia Tech Water Authority, and we got our water upstream. The other authority gets it downstream. And so I'm really hoping with all my heart that you will put this in your budget so that we can, for once and for all, get some facts on what is going on for the sake of our neighbors. Thank you.
And after Ms. Leach, is it Tom Hoffman?
I'm Irene Leach, and I live at 4220 North Fork Road in Elliston, in Roanoke. And I join the people who are asking you to please set aside at least $10,000 to engage a legal firm to protect Montgomery County from negative effects of the proposed pipeline. We need specific expertise to the pipeline and FERC issues for someone to do that, and Water and Power has that expertise. FERC is known for doing things to support the companies and what they want, doing things like approving requests for them to take steps to start the work before the certificate is done. And they'll just, they'll let them cut the trees, and then once they've done that, then they'll let them do something else. And there have been situations where the pipeline was practically built before the certificate came through. In New England, there's a pipeline that was built in 3 segments, which is against the rules, as you've heard tonight. There's just no telling what FERC is going to do in this process that we're now involved in. I've been working in the energy area, the policy area, for over 20 years as a consumer advocate. And consumer advocates have asked at least 3 times within my experience for better representation and involvement of landowners at FERC. And nothing has happened even now, even though Congress directed decades ago that they do something. There's a real problem with that agency. There's a need to look out for the county's interest and the interest of the individual landowners as this process continues. This industry has a documented pattern of misleading communities about what they're doing, and the risks are systematically hidden. Landowners find information is often not provided. I expect that I live several miles from where the compression station is going to be, whichever of the 2 that it appears most likely at this point will be fairly close to me. And I'm concerned about the air, the water, the soil, the children, all the things around us. I want to make the point of particularly thanking you for your support throughout this whole process. I am also a landowner in Buckingham County where I grew up. My family has a farm there that we've run for over 100 years, and the ACP is going to bisect it for a mile and put all of our major buildings homes within the blast zone. And the Buckingham Board of Supervisors passed a resolution of support before we even knew it was going to happen and refused to rescind it. And there haven't been public meetings in Buckingham like there are here. There hasn't been the kind of support that we experienced. And when I came in tonight and you all read the rules and said 5 minutes, I made a trip recently to Buckingham and they said 3 minutes and they cut me off mid-word, not even letting me finish the word, much less the sentence. And so my experiences in Buckingham and my complete frustration with how these companies are being able to come and take everything that we have makes me appreciate you all even more than I have for the 30 years that I've lived here. And so I wanted to ask that you support this request, but also thank you for what you do for the citizens of Montgomery County.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman, and then if there are some other folks who have not signed up, if you would just start coming up towards the front. If there's any other individuals who have not spoken, would like to address the board in regards to the budget, please come forward and have a seat on the front row. Mr. Hoffman.
Yes, hi, my name is Tom Hoffman. My address is 135 Davis Lane in Harrisburg. And lawyers, I've not had any need to have a lawyer recently, and I hope I never do. But I know they cost money, though, and if you've got $10,000, it'll go a lot further. Oh, I have some lawyer. Okay.
I've heard much worse. Okay.
Anyway, you get $10,000. It's going to go a lot further if you pool it with the other 3 counties in this case, because you know, if you go out and hire your own law firm, then you got to do. It's going to be duplicate work, and that just costs more money. And the other thing besides that is we need to show a unified front against this pipeline. The 4 counties so far, and hopefully some of the other counties will come in too. So since you guys have adopted a resolution to oppose the pipeline, I think that would be the thing to do, is go with this water and power law firm out of California. I looked at their website, and yeah, they specialize in environmental issues, and they have experience with FERC, which means that they've had a lot more experience with FERC than most law firms. Most law firms have. And okay, the only thing worse than a pipeline is a compressor station, and I've seen pictures of them, and I think I saw a video of one, and it sounds like a jet taking off when they're doing the blowout or whatever they call it, and it just throws all this poison up in the air, and people around there are going to be getting cancer and filling up the hospitals and all that. Mountain Valley has said that they're not going to build a compressor station in Virginia, but they're not fooling anybody with that, because Virginia, they're going all the way from the West Virginia line down to Chatham. How could they not have one in all that distance? And wherever they put it, it's going to do a lot of damage. And this is a 42-inch pipeline we're talking about. If you want to see what an 8-inch pipeline can do, go out 460 and look up at the one that Columbia Gas built over Peters Mountain to service the Selco plant. And there was an article in the paper a month ago about how Columbia's not even taking care of that 8-inch line. They're letting, either they had erosion or something, we had a storm or snowstorms or a lot of rain or something, and the pipe's exposed or something like that, and they're not even taking care of that. So why could you trust Mountain Valley to take care of a 42-inch pipeline? I mean, that's 3.5 times an 8-inch. So So, thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Ma'am, if you would come forward and state your name and address.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Margaret or Maggie Ralston, and I live at 2124 Mount Tabor Road in Blacksburg. And I thank you guys for really supporting being against the pipeline. So, and I do remember, many meetings ago that Supervisor Tuck had asked repeatedly of one of these pipeline representatives, who was actually a marketing guy, but anyway, asked him, what about a performance bond? Why don't you get an extra performance bond? And they said, well, why do we have to? We don't have to, so why would we? They really don't care about what it's going to really cost. And we do, I believe in the idea of the legal, working together with the legal battles to try to get organized and pool our efforts. One of the things that I think would be very useful, and you had asked months ago about what could the board do. One of the things the board could do is ask of the various department heads to prepare costs of things like what it would cost to repair Mount Tabor Road if that road got destroyed. What would it cost to put a water main down Mount Tabor Road or Ellet Valley Road if those water wells got broken? If we had statistics of what it would cost, it would be very, very useful. What are the projected costs of an additional medical care needed for dealing with the asthma attacks that will occur near a compressor station, with that kind of stuff? What are the costs of fighting a forest fire? What are those costs that they're not going to cover? We know the taxpayer is going to be stuck with that. We need those hardcore numbers. This gentleman that just spoke talked about the pipeline that went into still called Celanese plant. I had been talking to the road people, and apparently they had to spend, I can't remember if the number was $100,000 or $200,000 to repair the road right after they put that pipeline through. In addition, there's all this erosion going on. All you have to do is to look at any driveway that's a gravel driveway, and you know there's erosion that occurs with our gully washers that we have in this area. Just this past week, somebody's filling in a sinkhole right near us, and there's been truck after truck after truck after truck going down the small roads, Coalbank Hollow and onto Mount Tabor Road. We're having to stay out of their way because they're too big for the roads, they're heavy. I happen to live there's a bad curve on Mount Tabor going between two sinkholes. With all this heavy stuff going by, you kind of wonder every time, when's it going to break? If we have this heavy equipment for MVP coming through, there's going to be more on these fragile roads, and we are going to have to pay for them as taxpayers. I think fighting it legally ahead of time is the right, is not having them come in through in the first place is the right way to do it. And unfortunately, we have to go the legal route, I think. One thing, I don't know how many of you have read the rules for the compressor stations for their testing and their releases. We've all heard about how they blast. And it goes boom, and all the racket they make and the pollution going up and so forth. Well, the rules are, if there's an accident, they don't have to report it for a year. It's the best I can remember from reading this stuff. They have to report it annually, unless it's bad enough that somebody actually notices. But if there's some release that gets extended, they don't have to report it for the whole year. They have a 45-minute limit, I believe. I may have the numbers wrong, but it's 45 minutes, say, that they can release methane gas straight up to reduce the pressure. I could not find, when I was reading it, how frequently those 45-minute releases can be. Somebody, please read that with the legal aspects of it to see what those are, because they could do that repeatedly, and that's what the people in these other places that live near compressor stations talk about. And this was what's going to pollute. If it's in the Ellet Valley, all I could think of what would happen to the vineyard right across on the other side. They're really close. I do know that when our neighbors burn trash, the fumes come right up the road. And it sits there because we have these inversions. I think the fellow was talking about with the arsenal. It's the same problems. We're in these valleys and it has all this stuff going on. I watched fires. Somebody was burning trash on Bishop Road one day, and I took photos, and the flames went up, the smoke went up, and then it went horizontally, and they were down a valley where where the fire was, and it was right at the housetop levels of all the houses that were just above the hill. And it just sort of sat there and kind of went across that level. We could see that smoke. What was the invisible stuff going to do? Anyway, thank you guys very much for everything you're doing for us, and appreciate it. Take care.
Are there other individuals that would like to speak?
My name is Phyllis Olinger, and I live at 307 Miller Street in Christiansburg. And I didn't intend to speak, but I noticed you had a thing about the tax assessment and there'll be no increases in it. I just mainly wanted to thank you because our first year, it's our first kind of couple years in our new home. It took me 66 years to get a house. So the taxes are really important to me and keeping up with them. And the first couple of years after the assessment, I took a little hit. And so I appreciate this, and I'm sure some other people do. And I just wanted to thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there other individuals? Yes, ma'am. And if you would please state your name and address.
Hello, my name's Janice Geyer. I live at 1723 Jefferson Forest Lane.
Could you repeat your last name? You're very soft spoken.
I'm sorry, Geyer.
Thank you.
I've got a cold, so my voice may do many things. I wanted to speak in support of hiring water and power. I live in Preston Forest, and MVP said that, well, since we're going through a neighborhood, we can put the valves closer together. When we're not going through neighborhoods, they get farther apart. We're in the forest, I think they get really far apart. The importance of that is what happens if it blows. You have a blast, which depends on where the ignition is and all these different factors that determine how big that is. After that, all the gas, they have these valves, and the valves are supposed to be triggered. Hopefully the blast doesn't happen at a valve. The valves close. All that high-pressure gas has to be drained out before anybody can come anywhere near it to help put it out, do anything. Now, they said that they would put it closer, which would mean that would last 20, 30 minutes only. So you have a blast, then you have 42-inch high-pressure pipeline with all that gas coming out. My concern is what's happening. Now they're saying their newest route goes down the side. So I'm thinking, knowing MVP, they're going to go back to bigger spaces. What happens in the other areas where the houses aren't so close together? Are we dealing with half an hour, 45 minutes to drain the gas? I have very little faith in FERC or Mountain Valley from talking to them. When I talked to the FERC man and I said, how could they place it where they're placing it? Where we have coal mines, we have earthquakes, and we have karst. And he said, well, you can't expect them to properly, to investigate. It would cost too much because it'll probably get moved anyway. That's the attitudes we're dealing with. I asked them why we keep getting hit with people coming through, and he said it's because the public land's narrow. Right where 460 comes through, the park land isn't as wide. So they're sitting at a big map, they see that, they draw the line, that's why they come down 460. It's very little information these people are using, and they aren't really investigating, and they require us to do it all. That's why we have to hire attorneys to help us. My other issue that the compressor stations are awful. They're just going to send all this gas and whatever chemicals, whatever unknown chemicals they use in fricking that comes up with it up into the air. Compressor stations are terrible. It's my understanding they have to put it in every so many miles. That's why they were putting it in Montgomery County. I don't think that's changed. The other issue is what happens to this thing 50 years afterwards. They're only going to use it for 15. They're only going to probably maintain it for 25. We're left with a 42-inch pipeline under our streams, under our rivers, in an area with karst, It's going to cave in. It's going to, water will rush in, and who knows where it comes out. We're going under the new river, And the other issue is you can't build over these things. I remember seeing an article in the newspaper about Christiansburg wanted to build something, and there was a small pipeline, so they had to move the building. You can't build roads because in addition to the distance between the valves, you have how hard the pipeline is itself. So if they're building it through the forest, they're building it through a community, you can't build a road over it. You can't build buildings. You are putting a corridor right through the county that it will have extremely limited usage. You can't plant trees over it. And this is permanent. This is forever. For something that's going to last maybe 15 years. Some people say, well, maybe they'll just use it to dispose the waste. It's a nice, convenient way to get rid of stuff. Fill these pipelines. I think there's a long, the short-term reasons not to do it are plentiful and all we need. But there's also long-term consideration. They're saying, oh, we're going to pay the counties this amount of money. Then, of course, they say, yeah, well, you use that money to repair the roads. You use that money for this and that. But who's looking at the long-term problems of the county? Thank you very much.
Is there any other individuals who would like to discuss our budget that is for the 2016-2017 year? I don't see anyone else coming forward. We're adjourned. We're